Just coming back. I've been playing MagDK up until the coming patch, looking to see what they're going to do with off balance. And of course, they finally iterated that off balance is going to remain as is. The only change that's going to be with Flame Lash, in terms of how Flame Lash is still going to be able to proc, is of course if you're able to root your target. So rooted targets will be able to be power lashed, and that's basically how they're going to change it. So it'll be people who are I guess CC'd and off balance, and then if that person is also rooted. So if you're not running a root, like if you're not running Talons on MagDK, like it's not even worth running Flame Lash anymore. So you're literally going to be forced into running Molten Whip. And most of the Molten Whip builds that I do see, I mean, I watch a lot of people that play MagDK, whether they play MagDK, you know, like on stream, or they put out videos. And of course, a lot of them run kind of this similar setups where it's like Blood Spawn and Crafty, maybe Burning Spellweave, or like Burning Spellweave with whatever sort of sustain set, whether they're running Lich or whatever, you know, Shackle, or they're running what's it called? Oh my god, what the hell's the name of that set? Forgive me. They're running, you know, typically they're running some sort of sustain set. And that's because for most of the time when they're playing, they're basically, you know, doing this, right? You gotta spam a bunch of abilities that are, you know, not designed to be spammed. So we'll do this a couple times and then CC their opponent and then go in for, you know, the Molten Whip proc. The reason I don't play that way is because on most of those builds, if you've ever, like, most of the time when I talk about builds and how hard a particular build is going to hit, like this is the build that I run. I released this build not too long ago. Kind of went back to old school MagDK with, you know, with Bloodthorn, Burning Spellweave, and Slimecraw, of course, Double Sword and Shield. You know, everything is spell damage on race changed over to Breton. You can see my tooltips on my Flame Lash, on my Ferocious Leap. You can see my damage here on my Talons. So this is my CP build. I released this build, you know, not too long ago. You can see the build here, right? You can see all the tooltips. And on most of those builds, they don't hit this hard, even though they may run very similar spell damage, but they get forced into running, you know, typically a little bit lower recovery, a little bit lower max Magicka, or they end up running a lot of recovery, because on most of those builds, you know, they're like 17, 1800, 2k, you know, with a pot, because they're forced into spamming, you know, Engulfing or Flames of Oblivion or Burning Embers, right? So it ends up taking their overall damage down so that they can get the proc. The proc is very easily mitigated just with a simple block, or just you can just roll dodge. I mean, it's so predictable when you see a person and they're sitting there, you know, doing this, and you already know that the Molten Whip is coming and the Fossilize, and then you just roll dodge, and then they just basically lost a lot of damage, and then they got to go through all that shit again. That's why I don't play that little mini game, because it's like when you're fighting against someone who's like remotely skilled, it becomes, the rotation is so obvious. You know, typically works on players who don't really understand, you know, PvP, and it works well on them. Which is why I don't play that way. I typically play Battlegrounds, Deathmatch, and looking for, you know, more competitive fights. And unfortunately, we see patch after patch after patch, MagDK gets nerfed. You see, you know, the nerf to Embers, which went from, you know, 10 seconds to 12 seconds to 14 seconds. And of course, this was PvE related to give Magicka DKs more sustain in PvE, but it drastically affected both Magicka DK's damage as well as the healing that they receive from it, because the healing is based off of the damage. And of course, the longer it takes for the ability to ramp up and how much damage it's dealt, it means that you receive less healing. So it was an inadvertent nerf to Magicka DK. It's the same thing with Engulfing, even though they slightly buffed the overall damage. But if you look at prior to all the changes that they made to the dots, Magicka DK dots actually hit a little bit harder, which is what they were designed for, because, you know, Power Lash doesn't hit as hard comparatively to, let's say, like Frags or Spectral Bow. The other problem with Flame Lash is that it's a melee ability, so you have to be within 7 meters, whereas Frags and Spectral Bow, you're basically hitting somebody from 28 meters away. The other thing is that it's free, right? To, you know, Spectral Bow, to get Spectral Bow is free. And even though it has a cost, you know, you have to cast the Spectral Bow buff first, and then you get the actual bow itself for free. The problem is that to actually get the power lash, you actually have to first whip your opponent, then CC that opponent, and then power lash that. Or you have to power lash, you have to whip, so you have to CC them and then whip them, and then you gain access to the power lash. So it costs you like 8,000 magic, right? Because it's, what is it, 3,400? That's 5k. Right, that's 50. Say 2, that's 5,400, and then the proc is half of that, so it's another 1k, right? So it's around 7,000 Magicka, and the proc is easily avoided, right? Because the person can just CC break and then roll dodge, and then you don't get the damage. You do get the healing, but then you don't get the actual damage. Whereas the spectral bow is much easier to land. The spectral bow, the frag is much easier to land, because if you CC the person and they do roll dodge, you have time where you can basically launch the ability and just wait for them to start moving, whether start running, trying to line of sight, and then it'll either force a second dodge roll, right, which causes them to waste more stamina, or you actually gain the legend. But that's not the case with MagicDK, because you're typically stuck within 7 meters. You don't have access, right? I can sit there, I can fossilize the person, and now I have access to the power lash. But if that person moves away, I don't have access. I don't have access until I'm back within range. And so that's the big difference between the 3 different proc abilities, talking about, you know, Flame Lash with Crystal Frags, and then of course the proc from Spectral Bow. And of course most people understand that those abilities are ranged. 2, Crystal Frags can be procced off of Crystal Frags. It can basically be procced off anything on your bar. Whereas on MagicDK, the only way that you can proc a frag is by hitting somebody who's either already CC'd or rooting a person and then double whipping that person. So it's very limited in its usefulness. It's the same thing if you're playing a MagicDK and you're using Molten, right? You've got to sit there and you've got to do this, right? And then you have access to Molten Whip. Otherwise, Molten Whip heals for deals no damage. It deals the same amount of base damage as base Flame Lash, and it gives you a little bit of extra max Magicka, which really isn't all that much anyway. So it doesn't really increase your damage all that much. The other problem is that, of course, MagicDK, compared to the other 2 builds that you're talking about, Magicka Sorc and Magicka Nightblade, is that Magicka Nightblade and of course Magicka Sorc have far more mobility than MagDK, right? If you ever watch most MagDK builds, whether you're watching like Nurnstorm or like King of Games, or if you're watching like Pain in the Axe, when you watch them play, this is their gap closer, right? This is how they get to an opponent. They do this. This is your gap closer as a MagDK for the most part, because realistically speaking, you don't have you're too bar hungry, right? You need to CC. If you're running Molten, which all 3 of those players run Molten, they're typically running Cauterize. They're running Cauterize. They're running Engulfing, and then they're running Burning Embers. Of course, I don't think Burning Embers is really worth running. I really don't even think Engulfing is worth running. But to eke out a little bit more damage, it's the only reason why it's still useful. In terms of its damage over time, on the other hand, it's really not, because the damage over time is really weak. It can be cleansed, it can be cloaked, etc. It can easily heal through, especially with most other Magicka builds are running Arresto and they're running like Rapid Regen, and Rapid Regen heals so much it just out heals the dots. Templar just has so much burst heals that they're like dots. What dots? And so that's where most of the time. One of the things I do watch a lot of, like these 1vx clips from other people, and I watch the players they fight. Usually low CP, high HP players who don't like protect themselves. They don't CC break. They don't situationally dodge roll. They don't basically they're just not good fighters. They're not good competent PvPers that you're fighting. And it's always easy to find, 1vx clips, over the course of like a long duration stream. You're always going to come across a couple of people who have absolutely no idea how to play, and it gives people who watch those clips the wrong impression about how MagDK is. They see these MagDK, and I watch some of these things and I see like a MagDK leap somebody for like 12k damage, and I'm like, shit, I never think I've ever leaped anybody for like over 9k on my MagDK. And I typically run typically on very glossy MagDK builds, and even on like a low CP person get like 9.9k. And I'm just like, these people must really not know how to build For PvP, they're probably running around with like divines and like PvE setups to take, you know, that amount of damage. Because it's like, I've never seen MagDKs or even get hit by MagDK that hits that hard. So one of the things, unfortunately, that you're going to see for next patch is more sustain issues because of the changes to off balance, especially on MagDK. You're going to see more MagDKs running, either not playing, or it's probably one of the more underrepresented classes, kind of like Magicka Necromancer. I don't really see a lot of Magicka Necromancers in Battlegrounds. It's usually Stam DKs, Magicka Sorks. There's a lot of Stam and Magicka Wardens. Magicka Warden, very strong. Magicka Warden, so strong. Occasionally, I'll see a Magicka Nightblade, but for the most part, most of the Nightblades that I see are all, you know, bow spamming, I should say snipe spamming bow users. Like literally like 99% of the players. Like every time I see a Nightblade, it's always with a bow. But it doesn't matter what CP level. They could be like CP 200, CP 300, CP 1200, 1800. Every single one of them that I see plays Nightblade. You know, they're all Nightblade snipe spammers. And that's literally no diversity among people who play Nightblade. On a rare occasion, I might see a Magblade, but it's very often. It's very often. It's not very often, I should say. Primary problem with MagDK is, one, wings is shit. I run wings. You still take so much damage because there's so many abilities that just go right through it, like Crushing Shock. Right, Crushing Shock goes through wings. You still take reduced damage, but you still take damage nonetheless, and you primarily use it both for the damage reduction as well as the mobility, which means you miss out on the other version, which is actually really strong. The other morph, Fiery Dragon Scales, is very strong, but since you unfortunately either run Protective Plate or you're running Race Against Time for the mobility, then you lose out on the defensive end of because you need mobility. MagDK has no mobility. Most DKs run a similar setup to this. I think most Magicka DKs don't run talents. Most of the MagDKs that I come across don't run talents. So, but what they replace it with is they replace it with Burning Embers. Most DKs run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? 8 of your 10 abilities are those, the ones that I just showed, for people who run, and of course, you know, right, with Molten. And then of course you need your spell damage buff, and then most of them run Inner Light. If they're not running Inner Light, then they're probably running Race Against Time, and maybe Wings, right? Maybe they're running Wings. And so it leaves you really bar hungry for other things that you could make use of, like, for example, having access to a gap closer. And it's not that this gap closer is very good, it's just that when this is your mode of transportation to get to somebody, especially when you're fighting like Magicka Sorks or Magicka Nightblades, fighting Magicka Wardens or Magicka Necromancers, and you have to do this to get up to them, you eat so much damage, or you get forced into doing this, which just means you just waste a shit ton of your stamina. Of course, by the time you get there, you have to CC the person to get a little breather, and then you've got a rebuff. So it becomes a really shitty way of interacting with other players. Most people don't even understand that, because by the time you get to your opponent, you've either taken so much damage that you've wasted probably like a quarter of your Magicka just healing. Just trying to get to your opponent, you've wasted a good amount of your Magicka just trying to get to them, and a good amount of your stamina. Or you get forced into doing this, right? You got to sprint to them, which is stupid because MagDK is so bar hungry for abilities, because most of the abilities only do like one thing. MagDK also has really shitty healing by comparison, that's why you see people who run Molten, they have to run Cauterize. Like I don't think any of them run Flames of Oblivion. I don't really see any of the people who stream and release content that run Flames of Oblivion, because they get forced into running Cauterize. And of course, most of them run Bloodspawn because they're so squishy. Because at least on one bar, and they all have sustain issues, because they usually run, either if they're not running dual sword and shield, then they're running like a Destro staff on the front. They've got like 2k, you know, in terms of the region, they got like 1800 2K with a pot, maybe 2200 with the Cyrodiil buff, and on top of that, they're running Elemental. What is it? Ellie Drain, and they still have sustain issues, and they all talk about how MagicK has shitty sustain. And this is the unfortunate, basically, meta of MagicK. And of course, literally patch after patch after patch, it just gets nerfed. What, of course, one of the biggest nerfs is always Fossilize, the persistent nerfing of Fossilize from being 15 meters down to 8 meters, and for some reason 8 meters was overpowered, so they nerfed it down to 7 meters. But then they gave Magicka literally the exact same ability, but instead of crowd controls multiple opponents, CCs everybody, does more damage, as well as being able to proc concussion for minor vulnerability, as well as being a mobility ability that can be utilized to stun multiple opponents. And of course, Magicka have no problem streaking 4 or 5 times to basically get away. But of course, Fossilize, according to the ESO community, was far too overpowered, because, you know, 8 meters was too much for a class that literally does this to gain access to their opponent, which is why for the longest time Fossilize was 15 meters, because most MagDKs do not run empowering chains. Like, it's very rare. The only ones that do run, they run the other morph that pulls you, and it's typically people who Zerg. It's like PvE tanks with like 40k, 50k HP. They just hold block and they just chain people over and over and over again. Because that ability, if the person can't be pulled, the ability is free. And since most of them don't have really good sustain, they just sit there spamming that shit over and over and over again, because it procs the slow. It procs the slow from warmth over and over and over again. So you persistently get slowed by 30%, and then it always has like this like tiny little mini stun every time it hits you for some reason. And of course, eventually, and of course you can't even roll dodge it, right? Because you try to roll dodge, it doesn't matter, because you still get pulled anyway, because some genius thought that was a good idea. And so that's basically the state of MagDK. Like, not even just talking about the passives, MagDK has some of the shittiest passives in the game. I mean, Combustion, pure shit. Just like pure shit. Really good for stamina DK, because for some reason stamina DKs can proc it much easier. Like I run an add-on so I can see the combustion, and I showcased this a long time ago. Even with a charged weapon, even with a charged Destro staff, and like literally every fire dot that I have, combustion is just shit. It's not worth running. Warmth, the 30% is not that great. It's needed, but it's not that great. I mean, when you look at a lot of the passives, they just don't deal enough damage. You just really don't eke out enough damage. You gain 6% more damage to your flame area of effect abilities. It's like most people don't even run banner, because banner is shit. Like, so the only thing that this thing buffs is like engulfing, and then like most MagDKs don't even run talons. So it's like that's the only thing that it buffs. It literally only buffs just that one ability, because most DKs don't even run burning talons. They don't even run either. They don't even run choking talons. They don't either morph, just because they're so bar hungry. Because most of them run burning embers instead of talents. But if you're running burning spellweave, then I recommend, of course, running burning talents, especially because the synergy hits really hard. Fully buffed does a lot of damage. Does pretty good damage. Fully buffed, you're gonna hit people. Or is it? It's gonna hit fairly hard. But in any event, thanks for watching. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe.